Nats Chat is brought to you by Walters. Make sure that you check out Walters' self-pour beer wall. Included on tap is Baby Shark IPA, Sunny Little Thing, Grapefruit Nectar, and more.
Walk on over to Walters for Game 5 of the NBA Finals. Tip at 9 p.m. this Monday night.
And on the mound, it's 35-year-old Paolo Espino. He broke into the big leagues as a Brewer. He faces them for the second time in his career as a starter, his fourth game overall. It's his first start on the mound in 2022.
The breaking ball is in there. Strike three call. Locked him up with a slider. Back it over the inside corner at 76 miles an hour. And Paolo Espino has his first strikeout, retiring the first two Brewers here in the top of the first inning. The right-hander's into the wind. Edwards' pitch swung on and drilled to deep left center field. This ball is gone. Up into the tables, above the Brewhouse red seats, Andrew McCutchen. And the Brewers doing what they do best, hit home runs. Their second of the day. It's now Milwaukee 4 and Washington 1.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Monday, June 13th, 2022, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who was at Nationals Park. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. A three-game sweep, what would have been the Nats' first series sweep of the season, was not to be on Sunday afternoon. A 4-1 loss to the Milwaukee Brewers at Nationals Park, so the Nats ended up taking two of the three games in the series. Nats this season now are 23 and 39, and the comeback down-to-earth game for the Nats offense ended up happening on Sunday. We thought that it might happen on Saturday, did not. The Nats were outstanding offensively over the first two games of this series, but Sunday ended up being a different story. Just the one run, just 8 hits, a double, and 7 singles. Nats did have 4 walks, but 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position. Mark, I guess it's good that the comeback down-to-earth game did not happen on Saturday, but unfortunately, the coming back down-to-earth did take place on Sunday.
Yeah, you knew it was going to happen eventually, unfortunately. The shame is they got a good pitching performance despite the piecemeal pitching plan for the day, and you'd like to take advantage of that and come away with a win and a series sweep. It wasn't meant to be. They had their chances early on against Mr. Jason Alexander, but as it turned out, the Brewers starter was master of his domain on this day.
He was. And you can't say that the Nats offense was queen of the castle. So it was. It kind of did not go in the Nats direction that way. Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of these games with the Nats offense this season, and this was just another one of those performances. I mean, there just was not a lot happening in this game. Just two Nats had multi-hit games. Cesar Hernandez had a couple of singles. Luis Garcia had a couple of singles. Each guy actually ended up having a nice series with what went down. But, like what we saw, the great production from Juan Soto and Nelson Cruz and Josh Bell over the first 3 games of the series. Those 3 guys on Sunday combined for just 2 hits, each of which was a single. And, you see this a lot of times, I feel like, with bad teams. When the team doesn't pitch well, the team hits well. When the team pitches well, the team doesn't hit well. That idea of like complementary baseball, which that's more of a football thing, complementary football. And of course, there's no such thing as complementary baseball. But it feels like when you're good, you do the 2 things well at the same time often. And when you're bad, maybe one goes well, but the other one doesn't.
I feel like we have had these games where you can kind of tell early on, they just don't have it offensively. And it's not like, they're sluggish for 4 or 5 innings and then they all of a sudden turn it on and figure it out. That just has not been the case. It's kind of been this way all year long. They either have it or they don't, and there's no in between. Although, look, they had chances early on. Through 6 innings, you have 8 hits for the Nats. Problem, talk about this all weekend, 7 singles and 1 double, so no power. And that came back to haunt them. And then the first 3 innings, 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position. You had 2 bases loaded situations that come out of that with only 1 run, and that was on a sacrifice fly. So, arguably they're 1 or 2 clutch hits away from actually making a big difference in this game. And it felt like Friday and Saturday, they had a bunch of those in their pocket. And on Sunday, they just did not have any one of them.
All right, I would like to raise this issue. Juan Soto on Sunday afternoon had a bunt single.
First pitch bunted up the third base line, and he's going to get himself a base hit.
Juan Soto bunted on Sunday afternoon. And it was a good bunt, so I want to give him credit for this. If it's possible to both love and despise something at the same time, that's how it kind of felt like about this bunt single. It was a well-executed bunt. He got a hit on the bunt, but it still was a bunt for arguably the best hitter on the planet. Juan Soto in the bottom of the first, a 1-out first pitch bunt single to the third base side of the infield. Like I said, perfectly executed, got himself a hit, but it was a bunt. And I think, as most people know by now, when a great batter bunts, takes his power out of the equation, the opposing team wins no matter what happens. I thought it was really interesting during Davey Martinez's post-game press conference with you guys. Davey, unsolicited, said he did not tell Juan Soto to bunt.
I did not have Soto bunt, by the way. Soto. Yeah, you got it down there, but.
What was your reaction?
I walked down the steps.
And, Davey was kind of kidding around about it, and he was laughing about it. He wasn't, super serious, and he wasn't, scolding Soto. But you could tell Davey wasn't a huge fan of Juan Soto doing this, and I don't blame Davey one bit. We have seen Soto do this previously this season, try to bunt, and it's like, why would you ever do that? Why do you think he did that on Sunday?
Well, all right, there's a lot here to this. Let me first just provide a little backstory to that exchange with Davey. Prior to the game, I was asking him about Victor Robles and how much he's been bunting. And Davey actually gave a really interesting and thorough answer to all of that about the thought process behind it, the lack of execution at times, the fact that he's really going for hits and not for sacrifices. So that was a whole other thing. And then, of course, because Soto bunted in the game and it caught everyone off guard, I think Davey wanted to immediately, he looked right at me and he said, by the way, I didn't have that bunt on for Soto. He did that on his own. Now, it was also interesting in that he said Davey's initial reaction, he was not happy with it. But as he thought more about it, he said, in the end, I was kind of semi-okay with it. And the thought process was this. You have, first of all, they're giving it to you. The infield is shifted. So if you just get it down to the left side, you're going to get it, no problem. So number one, that. Number two, until today, the guys hitting right behind him, Nelson Cruz, Josh Bell, have been on fire. And so that was Soto kind of trusting the big bats behind him to come through with runners in scoring position. So that was the thought process. That doesn't make it right. And I believe that in the bigger picture, Davey does not want Juan Soto doing that. Certainly not against an inexperienced right-hander. If you're going up against a tough lefty, maybe different story. Against an inexperienced righty, probably not in that situation, especially you already have one out. Maybe with nobody out, you might think about it, a little better chance of still having a big inning. But I think Davey appreciates the idea that Juan is at least thinking out game situations. He's not just going up there and swinging out of his shoelaces all the time. He is thinking about the situation. The problem is sometimes you're overthinking it and not just thinking about the fact that, hey, I'm Juan Soto and he's Jason Alexander. And if I get a pitch to hit, I need to hit it really hard.
Do you think that any of this is just Juan Soto, for lack of a better word, being bored? That sometimes in sports you have someone who's so good and so talented that you kind of get bored and you try to say, I wonder if I can do this. And especially on this team in this season, given the monotony of the 162-game regular season, I wonder if any of something like that is just him saying, let me see if I can bunt. I can sort of rationalize doing it. Why the heck not? I wonder if the Nats were a really good team this season. Would he have done something like that on Sunday afternoon? And maybe the answer is yes. Okay. I mean, it's possible. But I just wonder, when you're as gifted as he is, you're almost like, let me try this and just see what happens, because I feel like I can do this.
I get what you're saying, but I think if he was on fire right now, it's a different story. But he's not. He's been searching for it, and he's had a good couple of days. It seems like he's starting to get back to being himself again. So that, to me, would be the last thing you do, to throw yourself out and do something out of your comfort zone. Go up there. I'm feeling good at the plate. We've been, things have been going well the last couple of days. I'm going to swing and try to get a big hit here. So I don't think in this case that's what you're referring to. Sure, could that ever happen? Maybe. I don't think that's really where he is right now from a mental standpoint, both because of the kind of season that he's had. And you're in the first inning and you have a chance to give your team a lead. He is a team player. I think, if anything, it might be too much of a humility on his part and trusting Nelson Cruz and Josh Bell, as opposed to saying, hey, I'm Juan Soto. I'm better than them. Those are great hitters, but I'm better than them. I can take care of this myself. I don't need to just set the table for Nelson Cruz and Josh Bell.
Yeah, it was a weird thing to see. And the fact that it worked doesn't make it right. The fact that it worked almost ticks you off a little more, because it might incentivize him to do it again. And you're like, don't do that again, man. Because again, the Brewers win. I promise you, Craig Counsell loved that Juan Soto did that, because a bunt can only be a single. And Juan Soto is a threat every time he gets up there to do a lot more than just a single.
The reason that teams shift big hitters like that is because they're saying, hey, if you want to just bunt it over here, that's fine. We would rather have you do that than take a full swing and potentially hit the ball out of the park or a double or whatever else. So yeah, I agree. Other than a few extreme circumstances, to give in to that and just bunt is essentially giving the defense what they want.
100%. So we'll see if it's a lesson learned for Juan Soto, but when you're as good as he is, you can bunt like that and make it look pretty. And it sure did look pretty. I mean, I will give him credit for that.
I hope Victor was watching him to see how you do it.
Victor was jealous because Victor on Saturday had an atrocious bunt. I think it was a first pitch bunt pop out, if I remember correctly.
Exactly. And that's what I was asking Davey about pregame today to kind of follow up on all that. And so, yeah, you certainly hope that Victor Robles can see, hey, here's how you do it. If you want to do it, there are situations that call for it, but you better get it down. And he did not on Saturday.
Well, a few Nats who did do well offensively in this game, at least in terms of getting an extra base hit or getting multiple hits. So Keibert Ruiz was back as the Nats starting catcher on Sunday afternoon off Riley Adams having been the starting catcher on Saturday. Ruiz 1 for 3 with a double and a walk. He in the bottom of the second had a 1-out double to the left center field gap. Remember, Ruiz had a big game on Friday night, 3 for 5 solo homer and 2 singles. So the 2 starts for Ruiz in this series end up going quite well. Luis Garcia on Sunday afternoon had another multi-hit game, 2 for 4 with a couple of singles. Now, he did get thrown out trying to steal second base for a second consecutive game, but Luis Garcia in this series ended up going 7 for 13 with 7 singles. I know it's 7 singles, but the offense right now is there. He's getting on base a ton. We know the defense isn't great. Maybe you could quibble with some of the base running here right now, but man, he is getting a lot of hits in this latest go-round at the major league level.
And I'll tell you what, he should have had a third hit. In the 8th inning, he almost beat out a grounder to second that could have kept the inning alive. Very close play, called out, they challenged it. They were trying to go 3 for 3 on challenges, which I don't know if I've ever seen in the Davey Martinez era. They didn't get it. And watching the replay, I was struck by this, and I think the Nats feel the same way too and want to work with Luis on this. He kind of stutter steps into first base. Like he wasn't on the right stride to try to just hit the front of the bag. And just that little tiny thing might have been the difference between him being safe and being out. And even you go back to that stolen base attempt where he was thrown out, it did look like he was almost slowing down, a little awkward as he got to the end and he went to slide in to the base. These are little things, but they can make a big difference. And I think they want to work with him on some of that stuff because it could maximize even more what you get from him. Yeah, good series for him. Obviously, offensively, he's doing what you want him to do, but there's more there he could do if he refines some things. And this is what they're talking about with all the finer points of the game. They know he's got tons of talent. If they can just get him to harness it all and start doing some of these little things right on the bases, in the field, they may have themselves a really good player here.
Yeah, and I think with this team this season, it's okay to refine and learn these things at the major league level. He's doing well enough to where he should be in the majors right now. He's performing. So look at the number of hits he has in the number of games, and then look at the number of hits Alcides Escobar had in the number of games, okay? And it's not even close, the production you're getting from Luis Garcia here. He's batting .372, .378 on base, .488 slugging percentage. We on Sunday afternoon for a third straight game had Lane Thomas as the Nats leadoff batter, and he went 1 for 5. He had a single up the middle on a full count to begin the bottom of the third. And we also had Cesar Hernandez once again batting in the 2 spot. Cesar Hernandez had a good series, 6 for 14 with 6 singles. So good to see that. But ultimately, the offense not nearly good enough in this game on Sunday, off having been, like I said, tremendous over the first 2 games of this series. Hey guys, it's Al Galdi for Window Nation. It feels like everything is going up these days, including home prices. And so there's no better time to have the look of your home go up and the value of your home go up with new windows from Window Nation. Get 2 free windows with every 2 windows that you buy, plus pay nothing for 2 full years. Take advantage of this offer. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com and make sure that you tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you. It's getting hot outside. Weather impacts your windows. Hot days can cause a caulk to crack, seal failures, and condensation, Window Nation only uses top-of-the-line materials, including mold spray and Quad Max sealant. Window Nation is the best. Call 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com and make sure that you ask for the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi. 2 free windows for every 2 windows that you buy, plus pay nothing for 2 full years. 866-90NATION or windownation.com. That's 866-90NATION or windownation.com. And make sure that you tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you.
Pitching was good. Today just didn't come up with that big hit. Twice bases loaded, only scored 1 run. We just couldn't get that big hit today.
So it was really interesting to me how Davey Martinez navigated the Nats starting pitching on Sunday afternoon. We knew our guy Paolo Espino was pitching. Didn't really know necessarily how long. He hasn't been stretched out a ton, so the expectation of him going, say, 5 or 6 innings probably was unrealistic. But what this ended up being was what you call a tandem start. And the Nats never do stuff like this. They never do bullpen games or tandem starts or openers. We actually got one of those things on Sunday, a tandem start, where you start a reliever or a starter. He's only set to go, say, 3 innings, maybe 4 innings, and then you bring in the next guy. So it ended up being Paolo Espino and then Evan Lee. So it's funny. We thought Evan Lee would start the game. Paolo Espino got the surprise start per the announcement from Davey during his postgame press conference on Saturday. But essentially, each guy ended up being the starting pitcher in this game. And the overall result was actually pretty good, all things considered. Now, Paolo did the better of the 2, 1 run in 3 2/3 innings. Evan Lee, 2 runs in 2 1/3 innings. But if you add that up, that is the technical definition of a quality start. 3 runs in 6 innings. That's pretty good given the unique nature of this game for the Nats from a starting pitching standpoint.
They gave them a chance to win, and that's all you can ask for in that situation. 3 runs in 6 innings, absolutely perfectly fine. Now, the reason they did this was not necessarily because they had some bold idea. It was out of necessity. They knew they needed a fill-in starter here. They knew that Espino was not stretched out as much as they would like. He felt like it was a better matchup for Paolo, that Brewers lineup, than it would have been to have Lee start the game. So they went with Paolo first, let him go as far as he could go, and then brought in Lee. I think it was a calculated move also to bring in Lee towards the bottom of the lineup before he then faced the top. And the results, yes, Paolo was better than Lee. Really, it was just 2 batters for Lee in the 5th inning. It's a 2-out single by Christian Yelich and then a follow-up home run by Willy Adames, in which, to me, I thought Lee was a little over-consumed with Yelich on first base. There were 4 pickoff attempts during the course of that at-bat. He and Davey downplayed that, said, look, we knew he was a threat to run. We were going to try to hold him on. I just didn't execute a pitch to Adames. Maybe so. I kind of wonder, for a kid in that spot with 2 outs, go get the batter. Don't worry so much about the base runner. But that said, that was really his only mistake. I was surprised. Evan Lee was pretty down on himself after this one. Made it sound like he wasn't as sharp as he wanted to be. He wasn't real happy with the results. And I'm looking at this and saying, 2 batters and 2 pretty accomplished big league hitters, and otherwise solid, retired the last 4 that he faced. I thought, all things considered, Evan Lee did fine in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's a unique, special circumstance, so it's hard to pass too much judgment on it. We also had Adames down 0-2, which made that home run disappointing. We could have potentially put him away. Paolo in this game, the only real damage he gave up a run in the top of the 3rd on 2 doubles, gave up a 1-out double to Tyrone Taylor on a ball that bounced past Lane Thomas. This was a tricky play, but he tried to make a sliding forward catch. The ball bounced past him. You do wonder, would Victor Robles have done that? Probably not. And then Paolo gave up a 2-out RBI double to Willy Adames to left field for a 1-0 Brewers lead. Paolo in this game, 1 run, 3 2/3 innings. His ERA for the season went up from 2.03 to 2.08, which tells you how good Paolo has been this season. Do you think Paolo could have gone longer than the 3 2/3? That did seem kind of conservative to take him out at that point.
So he said in the moment he felt like he probably could have gone a little bit farther. Now, he had not thrown, I think, more than 48 pitches since early April, and had not thrown more than maybe 52 or something like that at all this season. So he was getting to that point where you probably don't want to extend him too much farther. And what he said was that while he felt okay coming out of the game, the real test would be the next day. And if he did go a little further and all of a sudden he goes to 70 pitches, he might be pretty sore the following day. Maybe that affects when he's available again to pitch after this. Now, He's experienced. He knows what he's doing. He's done this kind of thing before. He feels like if he gets another chance to start in 5 days, he'll be good to increase that number 15, 20 more pitches and, essentially build up to now maybe where he could be a true starter going 90 to 100. It does occur to me that we were focused on, okay, what are they going to do on Sunday? Is one of them going to pitch? And then, well, they got this doubleheader coming up. Well, you know what? This sets them up for it. I don't know for sure if this is what they're going to do. But they both pitch on Sunday. Now you go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday with the other 4 guys, and you now have 2 potential starters for the doubleheader on Friday. So perhaps we see them both start on Friday against the Phillies.
That would make the most sense, I mean, it's not like they're oozing with options, okay? So unless you're going to call up Cade Cavalli, and after his last start, doesn't feel like that's happening, this week anyway. The Nats have this series coming up against Atlanta Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night at Nationals Park. It's Josiah Gray, Steven Strasburg, Eric Fetty. Then Patrick Corbin will start Game 1 against Philadelphia on Thursday. And then, like you said, doubleheader on Friday. And then the Ryan Zimmerman number 11 retirement game on Saturday. So big stretch of games here coming up for the Nats against some teams that have been playing really well lately in the Braves and the Phillies. Oh, one more thing on Lee. So he took that comebacker.
The 2-1. Swinging a shot off the leg of Lee. He picks it up in front of the mound. He fires to first in time for the out. Here comes Davey Martinez and trainer Paul Lessard.
Is that why he got pulled from the game, or he could have stayed in the game off getting struck by the ball?
So he did stay in initially. It got him right below the right knee, and he showed us afterwards he's got kind of a welt down there. He said he felt fine in the moment. He went back to the dugout, and as you sit there for a little while, as so often happens, it stiffens up. It's getting pretty sore. I think he thinks he could have come back for more, and they would have considered bringing him back for more. If not for that, they decided, let's just cut it off here and not take any chances, knowing that they're probably going to need him again in 5 days to pitch. But like we said, you got your 6 innings out of the 2 of them. I don't think they were complaining too much about how that worked out. In a perfect world, yeah, he could have gone a little bit farther, but I don't think they were necessarily counting on that happening.
Yeah, no need to push it. By the way, the Braves won again on Sunday afternoon, a 5-3 win over the Pittsburgh Pirates. That is 11 consecutive games for the Braves. If you've been following the National League East, sort of the inevitable question that you've probably asked is, when are the Braves going to get going here? Well, the Braves have gotten going here, and now the Nats are facing the Braves off an 11-game winning streak. The Nats caught Milwaukee at a good time. The Brewers were really struggling. The losing streak ended up getting to 8 before the Milwaukee win at the Nats on Sunday. You're catching the Braves at the exact opposite time. The Braves are steamrolling people right now.
And then the Phillies after that, and they just finally lost a game for the first time in a long time as well. This is a tough week coming up with no breaks and a doubleheader, and it's going to be pretty unrelenting. It's going to be hot and muggy, but hey, the Braves can't keep winning forever, right? Maybe they're due for a loss.
No, and if the Nats bats are starting to warm up with the weather warming up, then, maybe we see the Nats end this winning streak here. I mean, who knows? It's certainly not out of the question. On our last installment of the Nats Chat podcast, we mentioned that Cole Henry was pitching on Saturday night. He pitched after our taping of the most recent episode of the Nats Chat podcast. And, it's so funny how things work out. So last weekend, you had those 3 encouraging outings at AAA for the Nats, right? Steven Strasburg, Cade Cavalli, Cole Henry. This weekend, you had 2 discouraging outings. And, it's 1 game for each guy, so we're not going crazy over this. But Cade Cavalli struggled on Friday night, and Cole Henry ended up struggling on Saturday night, an 11-7 loss for AAA Rochester at the St. Paul Saints. 4 runs in 3 innings, gave up 6 hits, a homer, and 5 singles, issued 1 walk. Recorded 3 strikeouts. We're not overreacting. He did well in Game 1 at AAA. He didn't do as well in Game number 2. But the timeline for Cole Henry, just to reset this, about 2 months at AAA, give or take. You think that's probably what Mike Rizzo was thinking?
So I just look at it this way. He gave him 2 months at AA before he promoted him. Now, the numbers were great. He was completely overwhelming AA hitters. So they moved him up. The fact that they did it at that point after only 2 months said to me, hey, if he were to keep going like this and he has a lot of success, you probably want to give him at least 2 months at AAA, and then now you start considering it. So come August, maybe that's the time frame. But that's not set in stone. And if Henry is struggling at all, or, as we saw last year and early this year with Cavalli, AAA was a different animal for him. And so if he is struggling, they're not going to force that issue, make it happen. I feel like moving him up to AAA in June, as they did, the beginning of June, at least says to me that they ideally want Cole Henry pitching for them in the big leagues before the end of the season. You wouldn't think he's just going to finish out the year at AAA and never get the call up unless he just really struggles at that level.
Yeah, you wouldn't think so. Cole Henry, by the way, is rated by MLB Pipeline as the Nats' number 3 prospect, number 2 pitching prospect. He is ahead of Jackson Rutledge. So Rutledge is the number 4 prospect. Henry's the number 3. So just to give you an idea of like the extent to which the Cole Henry stock has soared over the course of this season. It's been exciting to see. And the idea that we could see both Cavalli and Henry pitching for the Nats at the major league level before the end of this season is pretty cool. One more item from this game on Sunday. Carl Edwards Jr. is human. He gave up a run in the top of the 9th inning, gave up a leadoff homer to Andrew McCutchen, who I think after Freddie Freeman might be the ultimate Nats killer over the last few years. Andrew McCutchen, whether he's playing for the Pirates or whoever else, now with Milwaukee, it seems like he always hits against the Nats. So the scoreless inning streak of Carl Edwards Jr. comes to an end. It had been forever since Edwards had given up a run.
Yeah, it was his first outing. He gave up 3 runs on May 10th and then had 13 consecutive scoreless outings after that. So he was due. It's fine. And he gave it up to, like you said, a guy who traditionally kills them. But wouldn't you know, I looked this up when we were in Milwaukee a couple weeks ago, and I think McCutchen homered off them because I wanted to see the same thing. Who are the all-time best hitters against the Nationals? Looked it up by OPS, and I did minimum of 100 plate appearances all time against them. McCutchen's on the list, but he's, at least as of a couple weeks ago, was 14th on the list with a 989 OPS. Now, there was a stretch of several years with the Pirates, and I think also when he was with the Phillies, where he did, within one season, just torched him, completely torched him. The funny one was that Freddie Freeman, who we just think of as the all-time Nats killer, is like 32nd on the list in highest OPS. Again, we probably remember some distinctive moments and particular years where it felt like he hit 750 against them. But there was actually a stretch there, especially at the Nats' peak, when you have Scherzer, Strasburg, Corbin, everybody at their best, when he didn't do as well against them. But here's the funniest thing. You're never going to get it. But who's number 1 all time in highest OPS against the Nationals, minimum 100 plate appearances? I will just tell you, it is somebody who then went on to play for the Nationals after the fact.
Who is it?
It's Matt Adams.
Really?
1.168 OPS in 32 games. I think most of them with the Cardinals, maybe a few with the Braves. 32 games, 11 homers, 30 RBIs, 356 batting average, and a 1168 OPS. Albert Pujols right behind him at 1167. Mark Teixeira, Miguel Cabrera. Those are kind of going back a ways with some of these guys. Pete Alonso, and then Bryce Harper.
I was going to say Alonso. Alonso's the guy who really stands out these days because he seems to kill the Nats. And yeah, Harper, especially last year. Harper destroyed the Nats last season. So yeah, that does make some sense. But yeah, I think what's funny with McCutchen again is that, he's become kind of a journeyman. He's bounced around now in recent years, and it doesn't seem to matter who he plays for. He just always seems to get the Nats to some degree. You tell us what you think. Hit us up on Twitter at Nats_chat. You can email the podcast, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. Well, sadly, the run for Virginia Tech baseball is over. The Hokies lost to Oklahoma on Sunday afternoon in Game 3 of the best of 3 NCAA Super Regional in Blacksburg. 11-2 was the final, so the season ended with a whimper there for the Hokies, but still a spectacular season for Virginia Tech. Certainly nothing to be ashamed of, and very cool to see the Hokies get to this point and to host a Super Regional as Virginia Tech ended up doing. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chatter, courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast. And we're going to leave you with something special here right now. So the Nats Chat Podcast is on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Another podcast on this network is a Milwaukee Brewers podcast, Cruising for a Bruising. And among those on the podcast is Andrew Snyder. And of course, with Milwaukee playing the Nationals this weekend, we had Andrew Snyder with us watching the Nats. And so we're going to leave you with this report from Andrew Snyder from the Cruising for a Bruising podcast.
Hi, Nats Chat. Andrew Snyder from Cruising for a Bruising, Milwaukee Brewers podcast on the Eurostep Podcast Network and Blue Wire Podcast. Coming to you having just finished watching the final game of a 3-game series between the Nationals and Brewers. The Brewers salvaged the finale here 4-1. But after this series, I'll say something that you wouldn't anticipate a opposing fan to say about a 23-39 team. Glad they don't have to play the Nationals again this season because the Nationals are pesky, and I mean that as a compliment. A Game 1 battering 11-5 by the Nats really came in with a great plan at the plate to swing early in counts against Aaron Ashby and not let him get to 2-strike counts where he could get swings and misses with that devastating breaking ball. Lane Thomas living on base Juan Soto, obviously the guy you think about when you think about this Washington Nationals team as an opposing team. You think, all right, don't let Soto beat us, and we should be pretty good. But Nelson Cruz, Josh Bell, Kyber Ruiz prove that that's not always the case. Eric Fetty does a good job in limiting damage, 5 2/3 innings, only 3 earned runs allowed. And that might not be his prettiest line of the season, but it gave the Nationals everything they wanted. 19 hits in that first game. Just never felt like the Brewers had a chance once the Nationals retook the lead in the bottom of the third. An incredibly impressive performance that shows, even though this team has had some struggles, they don't have any quit in them, and that was impressive. Game 2, Eric Lauer just didn't have it for the Brewers. 5 innings, 7 hits, 8 runs. Again, the Nats being aggressive at the plate. Lane Thomas this time getting on with 2 walks, even though he didn't get a hit. I felt like giving any pitcher that got Lane Thomas out a certificate of achievement because he was just always on the base paths. Patrick Corbin wasn't his sharpest, 4 earned runs allowed in 6 innings. But I guess based on how he's been since that 2019 World Series winning season, you'll take it because largely he's been a disaster. But here he gave the Nats exactly what they needed to get a win. Positives on the Brewers end of things. The Christian Yelich at leadoff experiment looks like it's going to go well, but even with his 3 for 5 day, still couldn't get the job done because of really just the Nationals coming out and scoring a bunch of runs early, a 4 spot in the third and a 4 spot in the fifth. It's really tough to come back from that. The Brewers had leads in both Game 1 and Game 2 of this series, and it didn't matter. The Nationals just found a way to come back and beat them. Thankfully, the Brewers' losing streak was ended on Sunday with a 4-1 win. Willie Adames with 3 of the 4 RBI on the day for the Brewers, including a home run. I'm really interested to see how Espino for the Nationals progresses over the rest of the season. 3 2/3 innings pitched, 2.08 ERA on the year. I know he's mostly worked out of the bullpen, so coming in with fresh eyes, seeing him at a starting role for the first time, I thought it looked like he's got something to build off as well. Really just a series where I came out impressed with what the Nationals can do at their best. Obviously, 16 games back in the NL East as I record this, but maybe there's something to build on. Won't be in the playoffs this year, but you know what? You've made life hard against the Milwaukee Brewers. 3-3 for each team on the season across 6 games. So, you know what? Good luck to you the rest of the season. We'll be interested to hear your take on the Brewers in this series. And if you have a friend who's a Brewers fan, or if you're ever finished consuming the latest Nats Chat episode and really just want to keep listening to talk about baseball, myself and my co-host Adam McGee, we have a great time talking about the Brewers and, other teams across the league. Maybe we'll talk about the Nationals at some point if some national story hits the news, something like Tony La Russa calling for an intentional walk for the Chicago White Sox in a 1-2 count. If anything crazy like that happens during a Nationals game, maybe we'll chat about the Nats as well. But thanks so much, and good luck the rest of the way. And with the rest of the rebuild, maybe in a few years we'll meet up in the playoffs.